Welcome to the Simply Mindful Wellness Podcast. Join your host, Tracy, the Mindful Wellness Coach, as she takes a deeper look into nourishing your body, mind, and soul. Because being well creates the freedom to live life the way you want.
So, hi, Hannah. Thank you for joining us today. So, everybody, this is Hannah. She's a holistic health coach and she's an Applied Movement Neurology Master Practitioner. So if you could just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what that entails and what it is that you do.
Okay, so that's a complicated question, but I will do my best.
Okay.
So Applied Movement Neurology is it's an academy, it's an education academy, and I got into that because very, very long story short version, I was a practicing kind of movement therapist, movement specialist, and but I had pain, and I kind of looked into this neurological kind of functional neurology thing, and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Had some treatment on myself. The 9-year-old pain that I had, we resolved in about, I don't know, like a few sessions. So I was like, oh my God, tell me everything you know. So that was how kind of I got into doing it. What we do, I mean, there are different levels. So it's, like I said, it's education. So at the lower levels, at the lower tiers, I mean, it's still I would say advanced. The people that come on to do AMN Academy are, sort of serious personal, physical therapy practitioners. We have some doctors, we have physical therapists, we have osteopaths, we have physiotherapists, and, other people who are kind of curious about it. But you need to have some kind of base level of anatomy and physiology. But the first level, we talk about the cerebellum, we talk about the connection between the body, the brain, and movement, and what we can do to kind of influence that from a kind of a functional neurology perspective. Then we get into a kind of another level, the second certifications about pain and extra receptive neurological feedback, where things might be correlating from other systems in the body. So we look at a lot of the TMJ, but we also look at the endocrine system, like the visceral somatic integration, and other things like conscious proprioception and unconscious proprioception as it relates to maybe sort of pain in tissues and things. And then level 3 kind of dives a lot more into physiology. So we're kind of looking at the immune system, the gastrointestinal system, circadian systems, structure in more detail. But the big one, and this is a huge one, is the limbic system. So that's how kind of emotion and the brain drive it. But that's not where we stop, because then kind of once you've got that, I guess the kind of the thought process is let's let them in gently. Let's meet people where they need to be met, and then we get more into, because it's all bioelectrical. It's all bioelectrical in the way that we kind of work with reading bioelectrical systems. And then when we kind of get beyond our level 3 certification and all of that, which is really kind of, I would say it's at least first year med student, there's a lot. Then we kind of delve a little bit more into neuroinflammation, the glial system, PTSD, long-term inflammatory conditions, and subtle energy. And subtle energy is a big one, and I think, more and more people are becoming more and more aware of the effect of different kind of scales of what's going on in the body affects what's going on in the body. So we're kind of looking at things from, yes, the macroscopic perspective, taking care of yourself, the molecular perspective, and are the biochemical systems in the body functioning as they should? Is there a breakdown in communication? Because to me, it's all about communication. If the brain isn't providing or receiving the right communication, things can't work in homeostasis as they should. But we can also look at the atomic level. We can look at kind of nitric oxide, we can look at the Krebs cycle, we can look at things that are more electron based, and then we can go deeper, we can go into the quantum and even into the subquantum. You know, there's the guys who have known this for years, like traditional Chinese medicine, and you know, sort of the Vedic and energy centers and auric layers. But you know, what we know is that we only see 0.003% of the electromagnetic spectrum, and there's an awful lot that's going on in and out of the body that we can't see. So what AMN has is a system that can kind of hone in on, like, where's the problem, what is it, like, and then why. And I think that's really interesting, because the way that it differs from certainly allopathic medicine is that rather than going on, well, these are your symptoms, other people have had these symptoms, it must be this, is to go, well, hang on a minute, let's never mind that, let's look at you, let's look at your life, your experiences, your environment, and what's gone on with you. So we can then go, right, okay, well, there's a series of potential kind of breakdowns that cause disharmony, dis-ease in the body. And then we can provide feedback that's going to put that right. And then provide holistic health kind of interventions that are going to prevent it from going wrong in the future. And then those things are, you know, mind being and psyche being, I think, probably top hierarchically when we look at things like epigenetics and morphogenetics. You know, what we feed our body through that kind of information, the stories that we tell ourselves, the past, our experiences, all of that is huge. But equally our environment, and that can be our internal environment, what we're putting in our bodies, what we're putting in our brains now, you know, what we're watching, where we are. And, you know, things like, you know, are we happy? And are we kind of being martyrs? Or like, do we have some way of actually being able to change that? Is there something that we need to look at that's not right now environmentally? And then, you know, we're looking at hydration and nutrition, but, you know, whereas a lot of people take that as being sort of the highest place to look, you know, I kind of think, well, yeah, I mean, of course it's important, but hierarchically, I think probably not the most important. Sleep being huge. Sleep is one of the things that I treat neurologically, because sometimes there's more to it than just, you know, an unhealthy gut. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there isn't, you know, sometimes it's just like, oh my God, if you change your diet, you'd sleep better. But sometimes there's trauma, or sometimes there's some kind of bioelectrical kind of disconnect between the circuits of the brain that deal with sleep, or like the eyes. You know, we have a lot of things going on at the moment with not getting enough natural light and getting a lot of artificial light. So if you're staring at a blue screen, which tells your brain it's solar noon at 9 o'clock at night, you know, you're probably not going to go to sleep. But if you're doing all of the right things holistically, you're in a much better chance of keeping your body well. If it's still not right, that's when we need to look at therapeutic intervention. And then we kind of intervene, we sort it out, and then go, right, from now on, you do all these good things that your body wants, chances are you probably will maintain like health, and everything's in flux. And oh my goodness, our minds, you know, I notice my brain and its chatter constantly. Like, luckily I notice it, so I can tell it to shut up. But you know,
there's a lot of stuff there, but one of the things that I picked up on from you that I'm really liking about this, I mean, this is my sort of conversation, but the thing I'm really liking is that N=1. It's about the individual. It's not about lumping everybody into the same situations in cookie cutter methods and things like that. Okay, so how did you discover this way of working then, and tell us about your journey and like how you got into working like this? Obviously what you're doing now is really important stuff, but how did you get into this?
So like I said briefly, I mean, I kind of went on I should say, but I was pretty much solely a professional musician, professional singer.
Wow.
And professional classical singer. And obviously it's all about the body. But I had things that weren't optimal I had things that were like I'd get a stuck jaw, like I wouldn't feel like my diaphragm was releasing, I'd have things that weren't going right with the body. And I had pain coming up, and I had all of the anxieties that go with, like, what if they won't accept me in the audition? What if I'm not good enough? What, and it's a big kind of lack mindset in the world that I came out of. And I say came out of because I can sing now without any of that, but it's a very, very strange space where everything is kind of about how you're going to fail and trying to succeed through pushing through that. Anyway, that's probably a whole different discussion. But so I was always a fan of movement and exercise, and people would say, oh, you can't, if you're a singer, you shouldn't do lifting above your head, or if you're a singer, you shouldn't do crunches and this. I was like, why? I don't accept, because I'm not that personality type that accepts just like, I don't know why. So combined with having, unsuccessful physiotherapy, osteopath, like Alexander technique, Bowen therapy, all of these things, like not being able to get rid of pain, and not really understanding how my body worked, I was like, okay, I'm going to go and understand how my body works. And actually the most available way for me to do that was to train as a personal trainer, because you get anatomy and physiology and movement and understanding these exercises, which really was where the mind that I was at the time. But I was lucky enough to, when I enrolled on my course, they kind of had an advanced section which went much more into biomechanics. And I was like, oh, give me some of that, that's what I need. So whereas a lot of people just go, I just want to learn to work people out in a gym, my perspective was very much, I just want to know how my body works. So I got into that, and I was really, lots of synchronicity with this. I think is as they come, it was meant to happen. As I got into that, and I kind of did the level 2 exercise therapist kind of allows you to work in a gym. That basically gives you kind of the basics that you need in the insurance to work in a gym. So while I was completing level 3, I applied for this job, which was 10 minutes walk down the road. And I was living in West London near Notting Hill. It was very beautiful. And this boutique gym put an advert out for a fitness instructor. And I was working part-time as a singing teacher, but it was a part-time job. And I thought, well, I can do singing gigs, singing, teaching, and go and do this thing part-time in the gym. And I can learn so much more about it kind of by doing. So I applied, and they gave it to me, which was even more of a surprise. So I worked there, and I completed my personal training kind of instruction while I was there, and then started working with people. Really, a lot of those guys, being the kind of gym it was older population, quite tight, quite stressed, like movement restriction, pain. So I was like, oh my God, it's like my playground. And a couple of the PTs that were working there mentioned Applied Movement Neurology as something they'd seen, like videos and hacks and things that they'd done. So I looked into that, and I was just like, that is 100% me. So I when I got the opportunity, I contacted the guy who kind of, whose brainchild it is, name's David Fleming. And he was doing some therapy sessions, and I was like, right, I'm gonna pay, I'm gonna invest, and I'm gonna go and get some therapy sessions with this guy. And oh my God, like, I swear he is still probably the most intelligent person I've ever met in the entire world.
Wow.
Like, the way his brain works and analyzes, and he has to, what I love about it is, because I am quite woo-woo now, but it's come from a very kind of academic perspective, whereas a lot of people are either one or the other. I learned it, and I understood it from sort of the quantum physics perspective through him, because he will not share anything that he hasn't thought about, reasoned, kind of developed into a system, and then gone, I think I've got this kind of thing. So I love him. He's still just one of my favorite people in the world. But so I was like, okay, well, you need to teach me everything that you know, because he resolved my pain, which was, hanging around for 9 years.
Wow.
Like, he sorted that out. Like, we did some training together, sort of complex movement stuff, things that you wouldn't normally do in a gym. We learned loads about that. And started doing, or developing through the therapy. So I guess because I loved it so much, I was literally like a sponge for this information. And I did level 1 in a week. And I still hold the record for fastest person to pass the certification, like whoop, whoop. And I was just like, oh, just feed me it. And then I got into the next one, and I just went to clients in the gym because I was telling them all about what I was doing. And I was like, do you want some of this? Should we try it? And I just kind of played, and I played with this stuff, and I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. And yeah, just used it more and more and more. And I think after a while, I realized that I no longer needed to be working in a gym. I needed to be working as a therapist, because actually what I was able to do, what I could do for people wasn't necessarily congruent with what they were asking me for. So, you know, if someone comes in as a new client and is like, oh, I've got all these problems, but also I just need to like lose weight or something, I just want you to exercise me. I'm like, oh, but I could solve all your problems instead. And it was like, okay, there's a bit of a kind of a dissonance going on here. So I got more into the therapy side. And then, so this is the cool bit, because then we worked out we could do it remotely, and that was the game changer. That was the game changer, because like we know that we can do things like you know, Reiki and energy kind of sessions remotely, but to be able to, you know, to be able to get someone out of pain remotely in the same way that you would in a physical therapy session is like mind blowing. But ultimately, because we're reading bioelectrical, like energetic kind of signatures, I guess, on someone's body, it doesn't really matter. You know, we've got these phases, we've got the quantum, we've got the atomic, we've got the molecular, we've got the macroscopic, but they're all giving energy signatures, and cell to cell communication is electrical. So, you know, really, in the same way as if you point an aerial in a certain direction, you're going to get a certain channel. There's no real reason why I can't be doing that remotely with a person. So kind of when I understood that, and I was like, okay, so if I can really put my intention on a person who is not in the same room as me, I can read their energy as if they were in the same room as me. And I can imagine, and I used to, when I first started, I kind of get them to do like contacting their own, so someone had a stiff neck, and I'd be like pointing them to where like the tissue might be that they would need to kind of contact for me to kind of have a look at. But after a while, I just started doing it much more through thought and perception. And that you could just go, okay, well, if I was in the room with this person, I would contact. So I know I'm missing a lot out, but I'm just trying to give you an idea.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so for example, if somebody had, because this happened quite recently, someone's got a neck pain, and they're like, oh, it's just really stiff, you know, and it's like, ugh, and it's not been a chronic one, it's just something. And you're like, okay, fine. Well, usually just because it's not chronic doesn't mean that what was underlying it wasn't hanging around waiting to come out, but it's probably something inflammatory. It's probably a referred pain. So let's have a look at anything. The first thing that I want to look at is, you know, is there a tissue that is like causing the pain, and where is it being referred from? So we use a manual muscle test, like in kinesiology, where they take the arm and give it a push, and I do it, everyone's got their own way, but I do it thumb to pinky and then try and open. That's my muscle test. So, you know, if someone comes to me and they go, I've got a stiff neck, then I'd be like, okay, well, let's find a joint, let's find a tissue, let's see if there's an associative organ, let's see if there's inflammation involved, let's see, you know, if there's a nerve that's going on, like let's see whether it's mediated from central nervous system or peripheral or somatic, or, you know, let's see what's going on in there. And then to I can, you know, do the diagnostics. It's not a diagnosis. And I'm really, really keen to say that to people especially when I'm working with, you know, gastrointestinal or immune things. Just because I found something, it doesn't mean it's a diagnosis. It means it's an energetic kind of resonance that's there. But if I do the diagnostics and I find and I kind of create a picture, well, the chances are that this hurts because something's going on over here, and this has caused that to happen, and maybe there's something slightly emotionally involved with that, maybe there's an energy center out of balance or something like that. That's my complete picture. Well, then I have to provide the information back in person, the way that we would do that, we have really 3 techniques. One is tapping. Tapping is an alternating current, causes a piezoelectric charge. So with the intention of where we want the charge to go, combined with tapping. So I'll get a client to tap on their heads, or if they can't, I'll do it. I don't know why that works, but it seems to. But I get clients to tap on their head for me, or a direct current, which is like literally, you know, what your physio does, like stick the thumb right in, creating a much smaller kind of electrical field, direct current. Well, I can do that intentionally if I think about eddy currents. And you'd have to know what eddy currents are to really do that, but it's just that kind of idea of like visualizing maybe like tiny little eddy coils kind of coming at and so that's kind of my intention on that. Or I'll dig on myself, but create that intentional thing, or have streaming, and that's much more like this kind of the Reiki kind of approach, where I'm kind of creating that energy ball in my hand. And oh my goodness, when I first started doing this, I could barely feel anything, and then after a while it was like, it's like there's something solid, and it's like it's going what, but it's like I couldn't push my hands together if I tried while I'm doing this. It's crazy how much you feel it, but I had to really train myself to do that. To start with, I was just like, I don't know, like it still kind of worked out, but I think you get, the more you work with it, the more it kind of focuses for you. So so those are the 3 kind of main ways that we kind of provide the information back. But doing it online is obviously, you know, it's much more about attention and intention. And I think, you know, a little bit like, you know, how the modern meditative kind of practitioners teach you, there has to be that kind of elevated emotion idea in there as well. So that at least you're very calm, you're very centered, you've got that heart coherence. I feel like if you're distracted or if you're feeling negative, you're probably not really able to kind of share that energy in the same way.
So being in the right space, being present, the right time frame, the right realm, whatever you want to call it, being there with your person. So it's a really interesting way of working, and I work similarly myself, but I don't use ANM or AMN. Absolutely fascinating though that you can do this, and the way that energies work in the quantum realm, like you can manipulate that energy, because I think what a lot of people don't understand, and maybe what we've not explained so far, is that everything is energy and it's spin.
Well, everything is frequency, you know, everything is vibratory. You know, like I think people are pretty comfortable with the idea that their chair is just a series of atomic vibrations. You know, I think most people kind of understand that it's like, it's solid because like we understand it to be solid, but it is just a load of atoms rattling around. Well, the body's exactly that, you know, and then we go, okay, but it's also 99.9% space. And then, you know, 70% water, and the water's more molecular and the space is more atomic. And then we've got the quantum beyond that. So we've got all of these different scales to look at the body at. And I think, like, for me now, the biggest frustration with allopathic medicine is they're still working on this. It's only bio kind of chemical, but in the same breath, they'll do ECGs and EEGs. Yeah. In the same journal, they'll talk about cell-to-cell signaling being electronic. Yeah. And you're like, how can you not, like, you know, why? Like, why are we not seeing, I mean, on the positive of that, I have seen, you know, the NHS putting things like Reiki into play, you know, as a potential kind of alternative therapy. So I do think it's getting better. And I do think things take time. Obviously, in the current kind of climate, for those of us who practice holistic health, it's been challenging, you know, to sort of see, you know, without getting too controversial, you know, the stuff that's kind of pumped out of TV is not necessarily being conducive to what we know is best health. And
that's a very diplomatic way of putting it. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, we know better now. We do, you know, it's not just a pocket full of people. When I when I used to kind of, book my doctor's appointments religiously, I was really, I would use the word narcissistic into anybody who was doing anything kind of complementary health. I was very much one of those people. So I empathize and I get it. I just didn't know better. I didn't know better.
When you know better, you do better. Is the way I look at things. My background is science-based. I've worked in the NHS. I'm opposite end of the spectrum now. So similarly to yourself, melding everything that you've accumulated, learned, your personal journey, everything over this time in order to serve and benefit the people that come to you seeking help, essentially. And I think it's amazing that they're doing Reiki on the NHS. They're certainly not doing that around where I live.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I don't know whether they're necessarily doing it on, but I think it's the idea that if they are allowed to recommend it as a therapy, then it sort of adds some traction. A bit like, how you can get Pilates, like they'll tell you to go and do Pilates, but like they wouldn't necessarily tell you to go and see a Czech practitioner or an AMM practitioner that might be a little bit more advanced and know a little bit more, because it's not on their radar. So you can't get medical insurance to go and see somebody who would possibly do the best thing for you. And in this country at the moment, because we're very sort of, we don't believe we pay for our health, taxes, but I think there's that
we may not pay for it up front.
There is that resistance to going out and spending money on anything that that might be more beneficial than perhaps is what's offered. So but again, it's just about knowing. There's so much that I have learned. I think I totally believe in, everything quantum, the law of attraction, synchronicity, all of this stuff, and everything was thrown in my lap because I needed it to be. And there was just so much that I just had to learn quickly and understand and completely change my mindset, my point of view, my everything, when it came to just what on earth this experience that we're having in three-dimensional reality is. Because
sure.
My goodness,
what a serendipitous experience it's proved to be for you. Literally, you are exactly where you're meant to be at any given point in time, and what is meant for you will be for you, essentially. And I'm sure you're on that wavelength as well. So if you had to think about one thing that's affected you throughout your journey and has had like a really profound effect on the way you practice, could you pinpoint something and pick it out? Could it be like your own healing journey, or could it be someone that you've encountered along the way?
I would say a bit of both, because I've helped people in ways that I couldn't have imagined, but I don't think that I would have got to there if I hadn't gone through my own. And I think probably by the time I'd met David, who was going to fix my shoulder, I kind of pretty much had a good idea he was going to be the one. And I don't even know how I knew that. The brain does strange things to warp how we visualize history. But, I wouldn't have parted with, 4 figures, which is what I parted with to get something resolved, if I didn't really just believe it was the thing that I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And that, again, serendipitously the money was in the bank, which is the way it works. It's like, okay, I could have used that for a holiday, or I could have used that for sort of buying things that I think that I like, but I was like, no, I'm gonna spend that. And I think that for me, having somebody actually do it, I've been to therapy, I'm sure people will resonate with this. There's pain, and you go and see a therapist, and maybe it'll drop away for a while, and you've got to keep going back. And then and then someone goes, no, like, no, this is, I'm going to need, it's chronic, so I'm going to need to see you for maybe, 6 weeks or something. But,
do they know?
And I was just like, okay. And we just worked through, and nobody had ever worked on anything other than, my physical body. And with the possible exception of Bowen, which I know uses more, slightly subtle techniques, but I'm not that versed in it. And I think there's still quite a lot of physical kind of, maneuvering and pushing around, but just going, okay, well, like, we're going to go into your limbic system, your circadian biology, your gut biology, your immune biology. We're going to go into historic timelines. We're going to find out, like, and actually, we peeled back a lot of layers of dysfunctions. This thing had been around a long time, and I'd had a fair amount of my fair share of kind of anxiety and traumatic kind of mindset experiences through this. They were all being held in that kind of in that charge. And then, like, the real kind of one that released it was a afferent, which is body to brain, not brain to body, which I found really interesting, and so did Dave. A default mode network, which is, I don't know how to best explain default mode. I suppose it's like the chatter brain in a way. It's like it was like some kind of, subconscious kind of held belief energetically thing, but where you'd expect it to be going from the brain into the tissue, it was going from the tissue into the brain. So it's like the tissue had taught the brain the problem, not the other way around. And it was just like, oh, well, literally nobody would have found that. Like, that's insane. And then it all kind of went, and I went to bed a little bit, like if you have like a lymphatic massage or something, and you like you reach a sort of lymphatic or a toxin and you feel a bit woozy. I woke up in the morning feeling like, the only way I could really describe it is you like being teenage and smoking a joint and just feeling high. And I'm not a cannabis user, but like, it was literally like my whole body was relaxed, my brain was relaxed, my brain was quiet. And I don't think I'd experienced that, so I wasn't a meditator at that point, but everything just went, oh, and I was just walking around like with this grin going, everything's cool, like the kind of the Mr. Soft advert kind of thing. And I was like, that was me. I was like, that's insane. And I think understanding that your body can let go of something and just feel so completely different, that was huge. And then, like, we continued working and we sort of resolved more kind of lower level underlying, my battery just went low. Are you still there?
Yeah.
There you are. Yeah, just sort of lower level underlining kind of, maybe sort of immune gastrointestinal, like, the stuff that goes on in everyone's bodies, and just kind of normalizing things in there. And I just noticed that I had amazing energy, amazing sleep, all of these things that just felt really good because everything was getting normalized in my body. Mm-hmm. And I think, when I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. If people could just know that they could feel like this, that would be amazing.
I think that's the thing, is that they don't know.
That's still my hope for people. It really is. It's still my hope for people that they can, I support people with supplements, and I think you have sort of a similar thing, where it's like, for me, I'm like, yeah, because we're always in flux and we always need to put the best things into our body. But I mean, you don't know how good you're designed to feel, really. And I think, especially if you're stressed, which is most of the human population, and and you're tired and you don't live particularly good kind of circadian cycles with light, if you could be given the opportunity to feel optimal, like, you wouldn't want to give that away again.
No.
you wouldn't want to. And I think for some people, their base level of normal is so far removed from what normal does feel like, that it's hard to even explain, you know. And that you could go, like, if I could give the opportunity to feel this good, Like, if you knew what you were paying for, if you knew what you were investing in, like you would do it, but you don't have any reference point for that. And I think that's still the challenge. But I really hope that will be less and less of a challenge, because more and more holistic alternative therapeutic things are coming into play, where people are understanding that their body isn't a set of symptoms. It's not just the sum of its parts, but it's just this synergistic multi-level mechanism that all needs to be working in this beautiful harmonious rhythm, with a mind that is, doesn't have to be happy all the time. It just has to be present and have the ability to be present, and move from attention tasks to relaxation to going through emotions if they're there and they're raw, and then coming back to present again and not holding on to things. And I think that it's very easy for people who already have the capability to say, oh, you just do this. But if you've got stuff going on in your body, especially the gut, that brain, the third brain, which is holding on to trauma and things, it's hard. It's hard to let go of it. It's hard to read it. It's hard to observe it. But we can take all this away. We can improve it by working with bioelectrical systems, practicing good health, practicing understanding how to be balanced in a modern world that's not designed for us. And just generally doing the best we can, without being Zen monks, which we're not all designed to be. So.
No, for sure. So yeah, I think you put that really beautifully, actually. It's doing the best that we can in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. And I'm in total agreement that if people knew how awesome they could feel, they would want that every single day. But we're conditioned as a populace to not understand, not acknowledge, not know what's going on inside ourselves, because there's a pill for every ill, unfortunately.
There is. And also, we're trained to wait until we've got a symptom, what's on the TV, what was it during the lockdown is that, really normalizing getting drunk, like all these memes and all these things. Now, I'm not saying, because I like a drink, right? Because I like balance. And I will have a glass of wine, or if I'm partying, I might have more than I need to, and my body will pay for it. But also I'll go and earth myself and, drink plenty of water. But look, normalizing it's 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm going to drink a pint of wine, cause memes are not necessarily, conducive to, actually maybe what you need to be doing during this time is getting plenty of outside space, using this opportunity of downtime to go within a little bit, and kind of all of this. I mean, those of us who know did. That's the thing. But like, it wasn't out there, and it was what was out there was obviously, as we know, sort of populating fear. But it's that thing, if all these bad decisions, and then I must, all of the negativity around, I can't get to my doctor because I'm not a priority. That was a lot going on. But it's because we're conditioned to, if I'm sick, I need to go to a doctor. Well, what if you didn't get sick? I mean, I haven't been sick in I don't want to jinx myself, but I haven't been unhealthy other than maybe having to feel a bit tired and take myself to bed for probably 4 years, because I guess I know how to keep my immune system in balance as much as I can, and I know if I tip the balance, I've got to take precautionary kind of steps and act back to do that. And I know that my mind is really important in all of this, but I know that, and I know that a lot of people don't know that. But if we're in a whole paradigm that says, I'm just going to go along eating unhealthy food, watching TV, sitting all the time, doing 9 to 5s that stress me out, going straight to the pub or straight home in front of the telly, or to screaming kids, or to whatever it might be. And don't get me wrong, people with families and jobs are heroes. They have a lot to deal with. I've seen it. I don't want it. But what are we going to do to prevent sickness? Well, we don't. We just wait, and then we get sick, and then we demand something, and we demand 7 minutes of the GP's time to do the best that they can to prescribe something that they've been taught to prescribe because they're doing the best they can, or, to refer you to somebody who's going to take a long time to see you, who's quite often taking a best guess. And it might be a really good guess, but it's still a best guess, or they're going to open you up, which is not, in my opinion, particularly good for your body. So, unless something's fallen off and it needs to go back on, it's not necessarily the best thing that you can do unless you really got to a point where there's no return, which we shouldn't be getting to. But again, that's the whole point, isn't it? If you're waiting till a symptom's shown up, your immune system, which is designed to work under your conscious awareness to keep you well, is really sending you a signal to pay attention. And if we're still not going to pay attention, and we're going to go on, oh, this pain's really bugging me and I've just had to strap it up and carry on, it's like, well, at some point we might be heading for something a little bit worse. But again, it's paradigms, isn't it? And hopefully paradigms are shifting, because I do believe there's more people that see this. And I think, again, 2020 and beyond has opened some people's eyes. I don't really like to go for sort of conspiratorial theory kind of. I think that you can have divide and conquer, two sides of two sides of the same fear set, and actually what people resonate with as truth and what people follow as belief systems, because that's the human way to join a tribe. Sometimes we need to fly above a little bit and just go, well, what's right for me right now? Sure. But whatever's happened with that, I do think that more people have had their eyes open and their hearts open to possibilities of looking after themselves better, and that can only be a positive. So
absolutely it's all about the positives that you can take from any kind of situation like we've just been through.
Lessons.
Yes, lessons, life lessons. Love that. Okay, so if you had to give people one tip that they could go and do right now to improve their wellness, and you had to narrow it down to just one thing, what would be your top?
Okay. 15 minutes. 15 minutes is what it's going to take to go and find some grass, take your shoes off, take your sunglasses off if it's a sunny day. If it's raining, you can either wait and do it another day or just kind of push on. But outside, earthing yourself, proven anti-inflammatory, proven to calm you down into an alpha state in your brain, waves, the sunlight, catching full spectrum light from natural space, which is going to improve your circadian rhythm, which is, again, it's going to help calm your sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. If you can see peripherally rather than be around buildings, even better, because that's going to calm your sympathetic nervous system down more. That's like seasickness kind of thing near far. So standing barefoot, seeing sun is like my literally the simplest thing that you can do to improve your health right now. You can add to that by having a glass of water with it. You can add to it again by doing some movement in that space too. Sort of presence, mindfulness, breathing. All of those things are free. All of those things are available. All of those things you can do in 15 minutes every day, and you will feel better.
For sure. Okay, so I'm just going to finish off then with the last question. So what does the phrase mindful wellness mean to you?
Mindful wellness, being present so that you are not using your patterns and conditioning to make bad choices about your thoughts, about what you're putting into your body, about who you're gonna socialize with, about what you're gonna mindlessly scroll on the internet. If you can be present, if you can be mindful is being present. If you can then connect really with yourself, with your heart in that moment, you're always going to choose optimal wellness. I think that's what it means to me.
Love that. That's it. Oh, perfect. So thank you so much for your time today, Hannah. If people wanted to get in touch with you after today, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
The easiest way is actually just on my Facebook, just connecting to me. I have a page, Hannah Moodie Holistic Health, or you can just add me privately on my private profile, Hannah Moodie. Like, I'm not, don't really mind. You can send me messages on there. I'm not funny about that. But Hannah Moodie Holistic Health is my page on Facebook. That's probably the easiest at the moment to find me. And I'll be very happy to talk about any of the things I've spoken about today. And like I said, I could probably continue to talk for hours. I think we probably both could. We probably share a lot of interest and a lot of things to say. So yeah, always happy to continue the conversation.
For sure. And thanks very much, Hannah.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Simply Mindful Wellness podcast. Join us next time for a new episode.